Good evening and welcome to Myositis Support and Understanding. In this session, IG shortage, how you can get the care you need. So Patrick and Michelle, we appreciate you both taking the time this evening to discuss the IG shortage and what patients can do to ensure they get the care they need. Patrick Schmidt is the CEO of FF Enterprises, and Michelle is the Vice President of Patient Advocacy and Provider Relations of CSI Pharmacy, who happens to also be one of the sponsors of Myositis Life and MSU, and we appreciate all that they do. So Patrick, welcome.
Thank you, Jerry, and everybody else attending, and nice to spend part of a Wednesday evening with you. And I'm joined, happily joined by Michelle Vogel, who's been a longtime friend and associate, and we've worked together through multiple shortages, and we're happy to share whatever advice and insights we might have and hopefully make the situation better for everybody.
Great. So I'm just going to briefly introduce myself to everybody. My personal mission is to ensure patients have access to the providers they choose, the brand of therapies that work best for them, and the best site of care. I founded the IVIG Subcutaneous IG Patient Provider Facebook support group in 2007. I've been working with the myositis community since 2007, and in 2016 I joined CSI Pharmacy as the Vice President of Patient Advocacy and Provider Relations. Patrick, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you again. As Jerry mentioned, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of FFF Enterprises, or Triple F or 3F. That's a long story I won't go into tonight. And then also we have a specialty infusion business called DoFactor that we've had since 1995. And our specialty there is primarily IG care. And we're considered the largest distributor to healthcare providers of immune globulin products in the United States. And just by background, I'm father of a 29-year-old daughter and a 2.5-year-old son. And I think Michelle and I teamed up today, and we got a very young boy who was 6 years old and infused with subcutaneous immune globulin after he had been refused care at a children's hospital. And he's one of those young kids that had kind of a rare condition that didn't initially qualify for a continuation of IG care. And we worked together to have a real heartwarming success story today. And I mention that because we both, and everybody on the call, I'm sure, and James Sheets from CSI Pharmacy, we all take this very much to heart. And frankly, our heart breaks when people can't get the care they need. And we're going to do everything we can on this call to give you some advice and potentially point you in some right direction and get you the care you need. So thank you for that.
Yes. So our goal and everybody's goal is to make sure that every patient stays on their current brand of IG and their current site of care, but this may not be possible during the shortage. So we need to look at ways to ensure that no patient who needs this therapy goes without it. So we're looking to work together, and as Patrick said, we're all working together as a community to make sure no one falls through the cracks.
And so we're just my part of the talk this evening is just to talk about some of the various aspects that may impact your ability to access the care you need, and maybe in some cases might enhance your ability. And there's a variety of different immune globulin infusion sites of care. There's the home, there's the hospital, there's the ambulatory infusion centers that are quite popular, and you could be getting care in your physician office, and they're not all created equal, and they're not all looked equally the same from a commercial payers perspective, and some sites are considered more expensive, and they unfortunately don't all have equal access to IVIG. It's unfortunate, but we're gonna do our best to be a credible resource for you and give you straight answers, even though they may not be the answers you want. Just really oversimplifying, there's 5 key components to accessing IVIG, and it starts with the raw material. IVIG is a plasma-derived product, and it's made from plasma collections activities around the United States and around the world. And just to show you, IVIG was first introduced into the country in 1981, and since that time, there's been a tremendous amount of growth in the demand for IVIG. From treating chronic and rare conditions. And in 2007, for instance, there were 349 plasma collection facilities in the United States. In 2018, it's grown from 349 to 737 dedicated plasma collection facilities, and dedicated for the further manufacturing into IVIG and the other critical proteins that come from a liter of plasma. And the total donations have grown from 15 million liters of plasma to 49 million liters. And of that, about half of that volume goes out of the United States. The United States is the raw material supplier to the world. And consequently, I think the very bottom line, maybe of this entire talk, is we do need more plasma. And once the plasma is collected and tested, it's sent to manufacturing. There are 3 big manufacturers: Takeda, that used to be Shire, that was formerly Baxalta, and that was Baxter. So there's an economic aspect to this business, unfortunately. And Grifols. Takeda is a Japanese-owned company. Grifols is a Spanish-owned company. CSL is an Australian-owned company. And Octapharma is a European-owned company. I'll let that sink in for a second. But the big three manufacturers are Takeda, Grifols, and CSL. And there's two other companies that are considered smaller manufacturers, BPL and Kedrion. They all make quality products. They're all investing in yield improvements. They're all investing in plant capacity. Takeda purchased Shire, that had just opened a plant in Covington, Kentucky, a 1 million square foot plant that cost $1 billion to produce. It needs more plasma to run efficiently. Grifols has spent millions and millions of dollars on acquiring land in Clayton, North Carolina, and around the world to improve their capacity, and here in Los Angeles, California as well too. And same with CSL. So they're working virtually flat out to try and meet the really burgeoning demand for IG. And then for manufacturing, if it doesn't go direct from a manufacturer, it goes into distribution. FFF, my company, and the teammates here at FFF are in the specialty distribution business, along with the large drug wholesalers, AmerisourceBergen, Cardinal Healthcare, and McKesson. Those are their publicly traded stock symbols. FFF is not publicly traded. And then from there, it goes to an infusion provider, and we talked about the various sites of care. And depending on that infusion provider's access, they may be employing different allocation strategies on who gets the product, who doesn't get the product, whether they're canceling or maybe tapering off doses. So there's a variety of different non-standardized ways that many different infusion providers are trying to employ to meet the demand and allocate IG as fairly as possible. And then as I mentioned, there's an economic element and payers. There are 3 basic. There's a payer strategy I always refer to, and I call it less, and less. So a Blues plan or a United Healthcare, they may choose 1 or 2 of the 7 or 8 products that are on the marketplace as their formulary product. And if that product goes into short supply, it creates a problem for everybody who might have that insurance plan providing coverage for their care. Oh, there's too numerous of scenarios to cover on a call like this, but those are the main factors, and we can talk and answer some more questions about those should you have those. Just wanted to provide a little bit of background. But the market, maybe go to the next slide, Michelle. This is from the PPTA website. That's the Manufacturers Association. This is public information, and it shows the growth of IVIG. The blue bands are the North American data, and the lighter green or the teal is from the European data. And you can see the per capita users of IVIG is the United States, and it shows 2018 numbers, almost 88 million grams here in the U.S. The most recent data that's available through April of 2019 shows another increase. So from May of 18, so the last 12 months, from May of 2018 through April of 2019, there's been 91.2 million grams distributed. And this is just a little insight into the IVIG manufacturing. It's very different, and everybody on the call probably knows this already, but it's very different from pharmaceutical manufacturing. These are biological products. They're living products. They're very difficult to manufacture. And from the time plasma is collected till the time where you might see it in an infusion setting, is upwards of 7 months. So there's 91, as of April of this year, that's the most recent data, 91.2 million grams distributed in the United States. And that's an average of 7.6 million grams. And then when I looked at this data, I thought, if I'm on the call listening, I'm thinking, why am I on a phone call about an IG shortage when there's 7.6 million grams average per month being distributed? It sounds like a huge amount of product, and it is. But there's between 175 and 200,000 patients that are vying, and people that consume IVIG that are vying for that 7.6 million grams that are on average to come out. But for 6 of the last 12 months, it's been over the average, and 6, it's been below the average. So it doesn't come out in 1/12 increments that create some of these challenges that we're encountering today. And that range between those 12 months, there was 1 month where there was 9 million grams distributed, and there was 1 month when there was 6 million grams distributed. And your particular brand may have contributed to an oversupply that particular month, and it may have also been part of an undersupply on a short month. So just to amplify a little bit about, it doesn't come out evenly, and the demand is continuous and constant. These are the current products that are on the marketplace, the IV products, and the IV products that also have a subcutaneous route approved. And GammaGuard and GammaGuard Liquid are the Takeda products we talked about. Privigen is CSL's product. And the point of this slide, there are a few products on here, Gamaplex and Panziga, 2 of the smaller manufacturers, that are only available in certain sites of care. The larger manufacturers, Takeda, Grifols, and CSL, you'll find those products in every one of the sites of care that we showed earlier, the home, hospital, outpatient, the inpatient settings, ambulatory infusion centers. But some of the manufacturers have chosen only to ship their products because they have a limited amount. And if you're on the wrong site of care, or if you're on a site of care that they don't preference, you may not get access to that product. So the site of care is an important indicator. And then we are seeing some more availability with subcutaneous products. Q2Q is new to the marketplace. There's limited distributors where you can get Q2Q or limited infusion companies, but generally there is better availability on some of the sub-Q products, and Michelle, I'm sure, will talk more about that. And then again, we wanted to be a credible resource for you, depending on who your payer is and where your insurance lies and the affiliation of your infusion center. Some customers have preferred access to IVIG. It's unfortunate. And in times of shortage, manufacturers, sometimes direct distributors like my company, there are certain customers that we have to preference over other customers. And as somebody who's depending on these decisions being made that might impact their care, I'm just sharing this to just inform you that maybe there's a way to find a different infusion provider and get into a preferred access situation if you can. We do, I think Michelle and I both agree, and we want to provide hope here. There is IVIG in the marketplace. There are some impediments personally for you maybe to be able to get it. We'll do our best to help you work through what those impediments are, but there is help on the way. And we wanted to leave everybody here with hope and a message of security that, this too shall pass. And so ADMA Biologics has 2 products that should be coming here in the second half of 2019, which we're entering right now. Release dates are not well known. Therapure in Canada is an exciting technology, and it's a different technology than the other manufacturers are currently using. The other manufacturers are currently using a fractionation, a manufacturing technique that was designed in World War II to produce albumin. And it's not very gentle on IVIG, and it reduces the yield. There are some new improved manufacturing techniques that could increase the yield from a liter of plasma by 25%. And if those were being employed right now with the amount of plasma we're collecting, there would not be a shortage. So we just want to send a message of hope that there is help on the way. There's new manufacturing techniques that will produce more IVIG from the same liter of plasma. And there's some new manufacturers coming in. The GC Pharma is the Korean Green Cross, and we should see them in the marketplace in 2021 and 2022. So just to provide a little bit of background on the marketplace in general. It's a complex, economically driven marketplace, and access is not equal, unfortunately.
So you need to understand in the current situation what exactly your provider's telling you. So if no product's available, if IG's on back order, if they're rationing product, if they're canceling or postponing all patients, or prioritizing patients based on disease. So we're going to talk about, and I'm going to want to hear from all of you, what you're hearing from your provider and how we can address those issues. So for example, what should I do if my provider cannot get the brand of the IG I need? You can see if your provider can get another brand of IG that you can be switched to safely. I mean, that's one idea that you can do. Another one, what should I do if my provider no longer can get any brands of IG I need to get an infusion? That you would talk to your provider about switching to potentially another site of care. If you're currently being infused at an infusion center, you could discuss with your provider about switching to another infusion center or to a home infusion provider. If you're being infused at a home infusion provider and that home infusion provider can't provide care, then you can see about switching to another home infusion provider. And then what if your provider wants to switch you to another site of care, and this comes up and you're concerned about the cost, or they tell you it's not covered in another site of care. And that comes up a lot. And one thing you can talk about is with infusion centers, you can talk to a financial assistance department about payment plans. If it's a home health care or specialty pharmacy, ask about hardship or compassionate care or copay assistance programs. There's a lot of competition out there, so you should be able to get help. Depending on your disease, depending upon the insurance, there are different programs out there. So there is help on anybody going without care. The most frustrating thing is if your provider just says you can't switch at all and tells you just to wait. And that's a whole nother scenario that I'm finding patients to be in, and that we need to discuss what you do because that's a real problem at this point. So now I want to really open it up. We're leaving both of our contact information, but we want to open this up for a real discussion and hear what problems you're having out there so we can help you guys through this.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, this is Patrick. This is not a commercial, and we're not trying to encourage anybody to use either CSI or New Factor or FFF Enterprises. Our goal is to help you stay with the site of care that you've been comfortable with and your provider. And if you're thinking back about the diagram that we put up with the 5 components, someone would probably say, oh, you left out somebody really important, the physician who's writing the orders. We didn't do that intentionally or unintentionally, but that can be, I think when Michelle is saying, you may have to go to your doctor and ask, can I be referred to a different home infusion company or a different site of care? And we've been able to help a lot of people by them doing that. So hopefully we can help you with your questions.
Thank you for that. If we at MSU had thought that this was simply a commercial, believe me, we wouldn't have allowed it. We know CSI well, and we trust Michelle and James, and we just think that you guys are able to come together and provide the help that you are. Michelle, did you want to start taking questions?
Most definitely.
Okay. For those in the chat, I'll just quickly read those. We'll start back with Dawn. In her interest, some patients not being rescheduled as quickly may be based on their insurance. That correct?
About being rescheduled, insurance can be a problem with being rescheduled, and in terms of also it just depends on, and Patrick went into this about insurance, what insurance companies are contracting with what brands, and which, Patrick, you can go into this with what brands they have available with the contracts.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is from a senior executive of one of the large IVIG manufacturers, and he says, Patrick, we only produce enough to take care of 3 out of every 10 people that need IVIG. So we need every one of those manufacturers to produce every one of those 91 million grams we were talking about. And if there were 10 of us in a room, only 3 of us could get that brand of the product. So if your insurance company has chosen that brand and trying to treat their entire patient population that needs IVIG, it's going to be a problem. And I think CSI sees this, and our organization sees it too. If you have a limitation by the formulary, the products that they'll only pay for, and that's not available, then you may have to write appeals letters, and CSI is very competent at doing that, as many organizations in the country are. But you have to appeal to them, and you might have to point them to the ASHP website that absolutely chronicles that there is a IVIG shortage, and then sometimes you get some of those formulary restrictions waived. But it takes all the manufacturers to produce all the IVIG. And payers have different strategies on where they're trying to cut costs, unfortunately.
Dawn has a question. As an advocate, new patients are being held off from starting IG. Do you think this will continue?
So we're seeing many patients starting. So it depends again on the site of care, unfortunately. So it depends if some of the hospitals are struggling. So we're seeing the hospitals having some of the hardest times of starting patients in some of the infusion centers. Others, it depends on the brand. And if they're having easier time, some of the home care sites of care are having a little bit of easier time. And subcutaneous is more available. It depends if your doctor feels it's appropriate to start you on subcutaneous IG. So that's also where it just depends on where the doctor feels. Some doctors feel that you should have your first infusion with a physician oversight to make sure you don't have bad reactions, and then you go into the home. Other physicians are comfortable with you being in the home. Others want you always in an infusion center. It's about where it's the best fit for you.
This is Patrick, and my advice is, and I think this is self-evident, you have to be an advocate for yourself or your loved one, and don't take no for an answer. There is IVIG available. Your institution, whatever site of care they are, however they classify themselves, as we mentioned earlier, access to IVIG is not uniform, and they may have a different contractual arrangement that gets them preferred access. And so ask your physician and do some research yourself to find other folks. There's a lot of outlets and there's a lot of expertise where healthcare providers are providing IVIG therapy. And I would just strongly urge you, don't take no for an answer. And if your physician can't help you, then look for yourself. And if as a last resort, call one of us and we'll do our best to help as well too.
Okay, I have a comment from Lindsay who doesn't have a microphone. She says, is there any estimate on how long the shortage may last? My husband was on Gamunex, I guess is SC, and just now has been denied treatment the last 2 weeks due to no medicine. Any suggestions, Michelle?
So again, we can't put a timetable on this shortage. However, it depends, and as Patrick and I keep on saying, it depends on what's happening in your current site of care. If it's because if they're saying that they can't get product currently, is there a possibility that your husband would do okay on a different brand, and he can stay in that current site of care? If that's a possibility and they can other brands, that I would ask that question. If they can't get product and they don't foresee getting product, then I would look to see if we can get you into another either infusion center or into home infusion, because there's no reason why he can't get treated.
Okay.
And then just maybe a little bit more. This is Patrick on the shortage. Having 31 years of experience in this particular industry, what's happening right now is every manufacturer is doing everything they can to produce as much IVIG as possible to meet the demand. And when infusions that are coming in and some new yield improvements, I think if we can hang on for another 5 to 6 months, it should improve. And Lord willing, it's a lot less than that.
I see one on the here about a question. Is that CSL assistant coverage? Because applied to, is that CSL versus CSI assistant coverage tonight, because only 2 conditions are covered? I think that means CSL. Is that from the company CSL?
Yeah, from CSL. It says there on the chat. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. So for CSL, it's only, so the manufacturers typically only cover on-label indications. So it would be primary immune deficiency, CIDP. Some of them have indications for ITP. So if you have myositis, myasthenia gravis, they're not going to get assistance for it. But that doesn't mean that you can't still get assistance if you need assistance in the home care setting. So if you do need assistance and you need, you can still ask your home care provider for help.
Okay, I have a note here, a question from Terry Bracewell, I believe. I wanted to change infusion centers. Insurance approved it, but they say if I switch, I could lose my monthly IVIG. If I am an existing patient for almost 17 months, why could I not just switch?
Does the questionnaire, do they mean that they could lose it from their existing infusion center? She said both. I mean, my advice, and I think Michelle would concur, if you're in a situation where you're getting the care you need, I think it's better to stay there. Maybe there's some other extenuating circumstances, might be too far to drive or some otherwhere, but I think there is a little element of risk. And unfortunately, and this is a horrible thing to say, but it does occur, unfortunately, sometimes people and use fear as a tactic to maybe maintain the business. And that's a terrible thing to say, but unfortunately, it's true. It's human nature. So if you're getting care, I think our advice would be, endure it as long as you can. And as the situation eases up, then maybe find a more suitable provider for you.
Dawn Dubois.
Hi, guys. Yes, I'm in from Bangor, Maine. And as an advocate, I do a lot of writing around IVIG, and I have a column, let me tell you. And as an advocate, I have a lot of patients all over the country that reach out to me. And it's very scary when myasthenia gravis patients and multiple other patients with multiple other disease states are suddenly stopped for their treatment. And it's just super scary. And insurances, that insurance question that I typed in is really scary to think that their insurance payer is the reason why they're getting delayed and other people are not. I had to kind of give that response. But why is it, do you think, that some areas are being affected more than others in this shortage, meaning locales in this country? Because some locations are not being affected as bad?
I've been hearing a lot. I've been following this closely. Yeah. And so it's depends on the hospitals. So what I've seen is the children's hospitals are affected really badly. I know that you're hearing like Massachusetts has been hit really hard. There's different urban areas, if there's major hospital systems gathered closely that are just hit. it may be, and Patrick may be able to answer this, if the hospital systems are buying one brand over another, and that brand happens to be on shortage, they're going to get hit really hard. And I think that's what's been happening a lot, is if they're buying one or two brands and they're not getting access to those brands, that's where you're getting hit with the shortage. Patrick, is that is one of the problems?
Well, it's first of all, it's a fantastic question, but it's really, really hard to answer because it is multifactorial. And I'll give you an example. And this took place in June. I won't identify the company, but it's one of the three major manufacturers. And if each of them can cover 3 out of every 10 patients, one of them didn't ship any IVIG in June.
Yeah.
They were 0 for June. And that kind of creates a bubble in the system that takes a while to fill back in. And to Michelle's point, if the hospital or the home infusion company or the physician office had preferenced that brand, nobody got that brand in June.
I mean, I was affected in June. My treatment was delayed by 2 weeks, and that in my treatment center only has one brand. So I completely understand. It's very scary, and I hope that something is done to alleviate that. And I just don't even know what to do as an advocate and as someone that has a platform to say, something needs to change, to depend on one brand to treat all of your patients, then all of a sudden have something stop. I mean, this is affecting people's lives, it's affecting their lives. And so that's what, people IM me, message me privately, and knowing personally what it feels like to all of a sudden have your body not have the treatment it needs is, it's really difficult. It's insanely difficult. And what I went through is not nearly as bad as what some people go through. So that's.
Well, first of all, God bless you for the work you're doing. And there is, and I hesitated mentioning this, but our organization did publish a paper, and that was published in October of 2018. Mm-hmm. Of the 80 million or 90 million grams that are produced in the United States, about 25% of those are used for a single condition called CIDP.
Right.
A nerve dis- and our study suggested that 63% of those are not candidates for IVIG. So we're using a lot of IVIG, not intentionally, not badly, on patient selection that have no chance of responding. We're working with payers to evaluate all the cases and make sure we free up some of those grams that are being used. And again, it's not because of any malfeasance or anything. It's because CIDP is a rare disorder. If you're a community neurologist, you'll see a CIDP patient once every five years. And this is the practice of medicine, and it requires practice. So there is hope on the way, and a better case review system, mm-hmm. I think can help patients get on the right therapy for them.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Gage.
It's kind of a strange situation that I have. I'm here in Columbus, Ohio, and I have my IVIG infusions at one of Ohio State University's small infusion centers next to one of the hospitals, very close to my home. For the last 2 months, every, a week or so before my date, I call, and they say, oh, no, we have plenty. They would tell us if we didn't. And every day prior to my infusion, I go and I ask the same question. I get there, they have it. And last time they said, I don't know why you're so concerned because you don't know anything. I also sent a message to my immunologist who is now leaving the system. And she said, oh, well, that's a pharmacy thing. I don't handle that. But the point is, they keep saying there is no issue here with that system. I don't know what anybody knows about that. The only recourse I have right now is they're actually setting up a meeting with me with the pharmacist on site the date of my next infusion. But I'm somewhat confused because, everybody's saying it's not, the sky isn't falling. I get privileging, by the way. But I'm trying to be, do everything I can to make sure that it is available, listening to all the stories across, all the different groups that I participate in. I don't know what's going on. Why am I hearing that? Does anybody have any insight about that?
Again, this is Patrick, and that there's some conjecture involved here. That's a major medical teaching institution, and we talked earlier about customers that might have some preferred access over a smaller rural or community hospital, and and a lot of times studies are conducted in those major teaching academic centers.
Yep.
So they may not be as impacted, and as we've said, access is not equal. Unfortunately, it's not equal and universal, and distribution plays a role too. Not all distributors are created the same, and we all have a little different process on how we do it, and some are more effective and some are less effective. So those could be some of the reasons.
Could I just comment on a question that a couple people mentioned when they talk about prior authorizations, and I've seen this lately in the different groups. I'm only recently diagnosed with CVID, but I've got a lot of experience with prior authorizations. If you have an authorization and you change anything, for example, location, then you have to get a new one. Usually, that's the way most providers work. So that may answer, some of the advice, Dawn, that you're providing. You've got to get some more information. But that tends to be the way they do it, and they really like to slow things down when you do it. I'm on, my providers all the time. As a result, I'm now in a fortunate situation where I have great Medicare coverage and Medigap, and I don't have those kinds of issues, knock on wood.
I think that's the underlying reason for I think the one questioner who had a question about should she, I think she was getting access to IVIG and was thinking about changing infusion centers. One of the reasons not to do that is you've got access to IVIG, and then to your point, it would require reauthorization.
Jason.
Okay, well, I've been getting IVIG with GammaGuard through New Factor going on 3 years. Right now, I don't have a problem. I get my delivery once a month, but I'm afraid that in the future I might have that problem. How do I know what brands are affected?
I want to just be very, very careful, because New Factor is our company. We have, as I said, access to IVIG is not uniform, and just like CSI on the call here too, we have superior access to IVIG, and our inventory position currently is in pretty good shape, and I think CSI would say the same thing. So I think, and I was trying to think of a nice way to say this, and this may not come across the way it's intended, so please forgive me. This is not a great time to be small, and I think the example about the academic medical center, it's not a great time to be a really small IVIG supplier because access is not universal. Choosing a larger supplier like CSI or our company, New Factor, is a good place to assure continuous supply.
And while we're just following up real quick, there was a question about are any of the subcutaneous products being affected?
So, some of them are, but there is generally currently, and if you ask this question a month from now, the answer may be different.
Sure.
But currently there is better availability. And I think that's one of the things that Michelle was advising. If you can't get IV, you might ask your physician, am I a candidate for a subcutaneous route? And currently, and Lord willing, this doesn't happen, you may have to go to subcutaneous for a few months, then maybe go back to IV for a few months. For the reasons we talked about, the manufacturers don't produce this in 1/12 increments. As we mentioned, one large brand didn't produce any, we didn't get any shipments in June. And if you wanted care in June, it would have had to have been a different product or a different route of administration.
Samsung, do you want to ask your question? Thank you.
Hi, yes, thank you. I was wondering, do we need to just then wait it out, or do we need to try to get people involved that don't necessarily have anything to do with it other than to support those of us that are getting it, or just wait it out?
In terms of waiting out, what do you mean?
What can we do? Like I saw on some of the Facebook pages, contact the FDA, contact, your congressman, but it seems from this conversation that we just need to contact our provider and see if we can switch or see if we're candidates for SubQ or something like that. But is now the time to get other people involved to advocate on our behalf, or just kind of wait it out?
So I think if you are personally affected, you need to be proactive in your care. So that's important. I think contacting the FDA is always important to alert them that there's a shortage. I know that the patient groups are all promoting to donate plasma, which is very important because we never have enough plasma. So there are plasma drives, and that is very important to do. In terms of an ask to Congress, I don't know what that ask would be. Patrick, do you have any suggestions?
I've seen this happen when someone contacts their congressman and the congressman places a phone call on behalf of them, and then everybody in that organization is terrified, and whoever that congressman's constituent that they're representing may get IVIG because of the phone call, but it's taking it from somebody else. And so the provider may act out of fear. So that could be a strategy. I don't necessarily recommend it, as you can probably tell. And instead of waiting it out, we talked earlier about if you can't get it from your current provider, talk to your physician, call other providers, call CSI Pharmacy, or just look for different sites of care. There is IVIG in the marketplace, in the IV and in the subcutaneous formats, and it just may take a little bit of searching. And I think that's time better spent than calling the congressman or the FDA, because the FDA knows that there's a shortage, and they're working as quickly as they can to approve the lots that are manufactured and get as much product into the marketplace as possible.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I think a lot of people are possibly spinning their wheels doing things that won't necessarily be as helpful as the things that you guys have pointed out. So thank you for this information.
I'm Senka Anastasova, calling from Southeast Europe. Actually, I'm not currently at the United States. Actually, I'm calling now from two different standpoints. Now I wish to ask a question as a director of Scientific Center for Social Science and Cultural Research, that we included health centers and providing specific kinds of medicines at the terrain of non-developed countries. And the second question is related to, as a patient, because I'm affected from polymyositis. So actually, what to do when I should travel to the United States and when I need to take IVIG. Let's say this month I should take first dosage of IVIG in Europe, but during September I need to be at the States. I need to travel to the States. So what to do if I need to stay longer, more than 2 months in the States, and to take IVIG there. So how to make compensation and regulation from the financial support from the funds that are coming from Europe. So what to do? I'm totally confused.
I think I would start answering the question by asking a question. Have you come to the U.S. before, and have you gotten infusions here in the U.S.?
No. Actually, yes, I've been at the United States several times for work because I'm university professor. But never, I've never been on IVIG. First time I should take this end of this month, August. And probably the second and the third time would be during I should be at the States. So what to do now?
Senka, what I would recommend you do is get an infusion as close to in Sweden, as close to your departure date as possible. And then when you get here, our contact information is on the screen. I would give us a call, and we can see if we can help you further outside the call.
Oh, thank you very much.
So it seems like at the moment, if you're not experiencing a shortage issue, you've not been called, you've not been rescheduled, dismissed, so forth and so on. It's kind of one of those things where you just are thankful that you're not having this problem. And if you are, and we've talked about, and Jim Matthews just wrote in the comments about that, making that potential switch from the IV to the sub-Q route. And I did that personally for side effect reasons about a year ago. And I'll tell you, I love subcutaneous IG. Of Jim's question, what other hurdles to switching from IV to sub-Q would there be if that's a necessary step for some people? Aside from insurance, I assume.
Yeah, so, and I think that insurance is getting easier to get it approved. So I'm finding that with all of the diseases, it's getting easier to get it covered. And patients are liking the infusions, the sub-Q, but it's about the doctors being educated about subcutaneous. So that's a big issue, is understanding the subcutaneous. It's a weekly infusion at home. And so, or sometimes it could be twice a week, depending upon how many sites that you need. But again, it's a matter of talking to your physician and making sure he or she understands it and likes it. It's being done in the myositis and myasthenia gravis community, as well as it's approved for CIDP and primary immune deficiencies. It's being done in both juvenile myositis and adult myositis community. So it's a matter of discussing it and making sure that the doctor likes it and will approve it.
Is there a max dose that you can be on for sub-Q just because of the volume? Or do they just break it up into a couple different infusions?
If James can unmute his mic, he can answer that question.
Yeah, we got a pharmacist on.
Yeah, no, so yeah, that's a great question, Jerry. And so, for the longest time, I've been in the home infusion industry for almost 20 years, and have worked with immune globulin therapy for about 15 of those years. And when subcutaneous first came out, it's been, it was really kind of reserved and had been used in the primary immune deficiency space, where they have the on-label indication at first, and it's typically lower doses than what we see with autoimmune disorders, where you need high-dose IG therapy. And we were always, years ago, under the assumption like we can't get them that big dose under their skin, and that's the way we thought about it, but it was flawed thinking. Because a simple way to overcome that, and a lot of it's been advancements in the therapy itself and in the formulations and how much you can administer in a certain site under the skin. But it's pretty difficult to get to a dose you can't give. As Michelle said, most people, even those with larger patients who are adults with myositis, who are coming over at 2 gram per kilogram doses every month, most of those folks we can even get in a once weekly infusion. I've not been able to have anyone that couldn't take it twice weekly, maybe have to break it up twice weekly. But there are actually studies out there, and actually one of the other pharmacists for our organization has spent a lot of time researching this. There's patients who are giving it daily.
That's what I was doing.
So you can get the dose in there. Yeah. So, to me, it's a great, for us, it's really, I always find myself, it's kind of, I feel like I'm singing the praises of sub-Q too much, and I'm almost selling subcutaneous, because it's not like there's not issues, and it's not necessarily appropriate for everyone, but it is a great option, certainly a great option for many, many patients and for many, many physicians and others. I do think there's a big knowledge gap right now. The more people learn, the more we're going to see.
Hey, James, there was just a question. This is Patrick. There was just a question that popped up about, I think Lindsay asked, exactly what is sub-Q? Would you describe the difference between IV and sub-Q?
Yeah, absolutely. So, all that we're talking about here is IG therapy. So that stands for immune globulin, right? And all immune globulins are antibodies. And specifically, it's a certain type of antibody called IgG. Well, we have IVIG, which means intravenous or into a vein. And then we have SCIG, which means subcutaneous or under the skin. So the only difference, really, and there's some differences in formulations with some of the products, and sometimes other things are administered with the product to help it more be absorbed. But for the most part, the only difference is the IgG is being administered under the skin instead of into the vein.
And we have a whole separate IG therapy session that we did with CSI recently, a couple months ago. And you can access on our website, understandingmyositis.org, and then click Browse Videos, and you'll find it. It's IG therapy. And then it goes into the differences with a lot of the brands. It goes into a lot of the sub-Q versus IG. So you can always check that out as well.
Yeah, I mean, the one major thing with insurance that if you decide to go for subcutaneous, make sure that whoever's doing the prior authorization does an incredibly good job with your prior authorization package and puts articles to support the use of subcutaneous with your prior authorization so you get approved. Because you can get approved and you don't even need to go through the appeal process. You get approved on the first time for all these diagnoses.
Okay, well, Michelle and Patrick, did you have any final closing comments that you want to provide?
My only last comment is please do not hesitate to contact me. You do not have to be a patient of CSI Pharmacy. I am here as a patient advocate to help you. So if anybody is having struggles with getting access to IVIG and you're being told that you can't get your product, you can call me, email me, and I will work with you to try to find a solution. Nobody needs to go without their therapy. So I am here to help you in any capacity.
Patrick, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I would just say, hang on. Help is on the way, and the situation will get better. This too shall pass, and we're praying that the situation gets better very quickly. And advocate for yourself. If Michelle said, call either one of us, and we'll transfer you in the right direction where you get the care you need. And God bless you all. Thank you.
And thank you. Again, we really appreciate Michelle and all the time that she takes in updating her groups and providing all the personal one-on-one help. It's amazing. Patrick, it's very nice to meet you today, and thank you for being that trusted source that we can come to between the two of you guys. And I know that I've personally learned a lot that will help me to better advocate for myositis patients specifically. And James, thanks again for your guest appearance and your explanation, is that you're always appreciated here. And thank everyone that took the time to attend. Enjoy the rest of your evening.